My name is Silas Wren. I'm 32 years old, and I work as an environmental engineer here in Boise, Idaho. For 3 years, I thought I knew everything about the woman I was going to marry. Delaney Hart seemed like the perfect partner, sincere, affectionate, and loyal. At least that's what I believed until 2 months before our wedding, when she taught me that sometimes the people closest to you are the ones capable of the deepest betrayal. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new, unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. I've always been the type of person who notices details others miss. It's part of my job. Environmental systems require precision, and inconsistencies can mean the difference between success and disaster. This skill served me well in my career, but I never imagined I'd need to apply it to my personal life. Delaney and I had been planning our wedding for months. We'd put down deposits, sent save the dates, and I'd already arranged 2 weeks off work for our honeymoon in Costa Rica. Everything seemed perfect. We lived together in a modest 2-bedroom house I'd bought 3 years earlier, and our routines had settled into something comfortable and predictable. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Silas, honey, I need to go help my sister Rebecca," Delaney said one evening, her voice carrying an unusual tension I hadn't heard before. "She just finalized her divorce and she's really struggling. I think I need to spend a couple weeks with her in Portland." I was reviewing project blueprints at our kitchen table when she made this announcement. Something in her tone made me look up from my work. She was standing by the window, not making eye contact, which was unusual for her. "Of course," I said. "Rebecca's been through a lot. When do you need to leave?" "Tomorrow morning," she replied quickly. "I know it's sudden, but she really needs me right now." Looking back, I should have paid more attention to the timing. 2 months before our wedding, and suddenly her sister needed immediate help. But I trusted Delaney completely. I helped her pack, drove her to the airport, and kissed her goodbye, telling her to take all the time Rebecca needed. The first week passed normally. We texted regularly, she called every couple days, and she posted occasional photos on Instagram. Coffee shops, walks in Portland neighborhoods, generic shots that could have been taken anywhere. I was busy with a major project at work, designing a water treatment system for a new residential development, so I didn't think much about the distance. But then something changed. The calls stopped, the texts became sporadic, then disappeared entirely. Her social media went silent. When I tried calling, it went straight to voicemail. When I sent texts, they showed as delivered but never got responses. After 5 days of complete silence, I decided to call Rebecca directly. We'd met several times over the years, and while we weren't close, we'd always been friendly. "Oh, hi, Silas," Rebecca said when she answered, her voice oddly formal. "How are you?" "I'm fine, thanks. I was just wondering how things are going with Delaney there. She hasn't been responding to my messages, and I wanted to make sure everything's okay." There was a long pause. Too long. She needs some time," Rebecca finally said. "I think you should respect that." "Time for what?" I asked. "Is she okay? Did something happen?" "I can't really discuss it, Silas. She'll reach out when she's ready." The line went dead. That conversation with Rebecca left me with more questions than answers. Something wasn't adding up. In my line of work, when data doesn't match expectations, you investigate. You don't ignore the anomaly and hope it resolves itself. I spent the next 2 days trying to rationalize Rebecca's response. Maybe Delaney was having pre-wedding jitters. Maybe she was dealing with some family drama I didn't know about. Maybe she just needed space to process whatever was happening with Rebecca's divorce. But the complete communication blackout felt wrong. This wasn't the woman I'd been with for 3 years. By Thursday evening, I'd made my decision. I called in sick to work on Friday, booked a last-minute flight to Portland, and packed an overnight bag. If Delaney needed space, fine. But I needed answers. The flight from Boise to Portland takes just over an hour. I spent most of it staring out the window, trying to prepare myself for whatever I might find. Part of me hoped I was overreacting, that there was a simple explanation for everything. Another part of me, the part that had learned to trust data over emotions, suspected I was about to discover something I didn't want to know. I landed at PDX around noon and took an Uber to Rebecca's neighborhood in southeast Portland. I'd been to her house once before, about 2 years ago, for a family barbecue. It was a small craftsman-style home in a quiet residential area, the kind of place where neighbors still talk to each other over fence lines. But when I got there, the house looked empty. No cars in the driveway, no lights on inside, mail overflowing from the mailbox. I knocked on the front door and waited. Nothing. I tried calling Rebecca's number again. It went straight to voicemail. That's when I decided to try Delaney's parents' house. Jim and Carol Hart lived about 15 miles away in Lake Oswego, in one of those upscale suburban neighborhoods where every lawn looks like it belongs in a magazine. I'd been there for family dinners, holiday gatherings, and Delaney's birthday parties. They'd always been warm and welcoming to me, treating me like the son-in-law they were about to gain. I parked across the street from their house and immediately noticed Delaney's blue Honda Civic in the driveway. My heart started pounding. She was here, not at Rebecca's. She'd been lying to me for 2 weeks. I sat in my rental car for about 10 minutes, trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to march up to the front door and demand an explanation, but something told me to wait, to observe. That's when I saw her. Delaney emerged from the house wearing clothes I'd never seen before. A sundress that was definitely not her usual style, and her hair was different too, styled in loose waves instead of her typical straight cut. She looked happy, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen in months. But what made my blood run cold was seeing who followed her out of the house. Zane Cooper. I recognized him from photos Delaney had shown me early in our relationship. He was her college boyfriend, the guy she'd dated for 2 years before we met. Tall, athletic, with that effortless charm that had apparently never quite left Delaney's system. She'd told me they'd ended things amicably when he moved to Seattle for work, and that they hadn't spoken in years. Yet here he was, walking out of her parents' house like he belonged there, putting his arm around her waist as they headed toward his black BMW. I watched them drive away, feeling like I was in some kind of alternate reality. The woman I was supposed to marry in 6 weeks was clearly involved with another man, and she'd been lying to me about it for God knows how long. The trip to help Rebecca was obviously a cover story. I drove back to the airport in a daze, caught the next flight to Boise, and spent the entire trip home trying to process what I'd witnessed. By the time I walked into our house, my house, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to confront her immediately. I wasn't going to call her parents or demand explanations. Instead, I was going to wait and see what she did next. The next 3 days passed in complete silence from Delaney's end. No calls, no texts, no acknowledgement that I even existed. I went to work, came home, and maintained my normal routine while internally preparing for whatever came next. Then, on Monday afternoon, I heard a car door slam in my driveway. I looked through the window and saw Delaney getting out of her Honda, carrying what looked like a thick folder, and wearing that same bright smile she used to give me when we first started dating. She walked up to my front door like nothing had happened, like she hadn't disappeared for 2 weeks without explanation. I opened the door before she could knock. "Hey, honey," she said cheerfully, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Sorry I've been so busy with Rebecca. You know how it is with family stuff." I stood there watching her. This woman I thought I knew completely, lied directly to my face with the confidence of someone who believed her own deception. "How's Rebecca doing?" I asked calmly. "Oh, she's much better now," Delaney replied, settling onto our couch and opening the folder she'd brought. "But look at this. I've been working on some final details for the wedding while I was there. I found this amazing florist who does these incredible arrangements with peonies and baby's breath. She spread out photos, fabric samples, and venue layouts across our coffee table like she was unveiling a masterpiece. Music playlists, invitation designs, menu options. She had it all organized with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that would have impressed me under different circumstances. "I was thinking we could do the ceremony at sunset," she continued, barely pausing for breath. "And I found this band that plays the perfect mix of classics and contemporary stuff. What do you think?" I watched her performance with a kind of detached fascination. She was acting out an elaborate fantasy where the past 2 weeks hadn't happened, where she hadn't been with Zane Cooper in Portland, where she could just slide back into our life and resume planning a wedding as if trust was something that could be rescheduled like a vendor appointment. "Delaney," I said quietly, "and the caterer has this amazing salmon option that would be perfect for—" "Delaney." She finally looked up at me, and for just a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear, maybe, or guilt, but it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "I need you to return the engagement ring," I said. The words hung in the air between us like a physical barrier. She blinked several times, as if trying to process what she'd heard. "What are you talking about?" She laughed nervously. "Silas, if this is about me being away for a few weeks—" "It's not about you being away," I interrupted. "It's about where you were and who you were with." Her face went pale. The wedding plans scattered across the coffee table suddenly looked like evidence at a crime scene. "I don't know what you think you—" "I saw you, Delaney, with Zane, at your parents' house." She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in 3 years, she had nothing to say. "You want to explain that?" I asked. She took a shaky breath. "Silas, it's not what you think. I ran into him by accident and we needed to talk about some old things, you know. We had unfinished business that I needed to resolve before we got married." "Unfinished business?" "Yes, I wanted to make sure I was completely ready for our marriage, that there weren't any lingering feelings or doubts. I thought it was better to deal with it now rather than wonder about it later." I nodded slowly. "And it took 2 weeks to resolve these feelings. It was complicated. We had a lot of history to work through." "And you couldn't mention any of this to me? Your fiancé?" She reached for my hand, but I pulled it away. "I was trying to protect you," she said. "I didn't want you to worry about something that ultimately didn't matter. Whether or not my fiancé is emotionally involved with another man doesn't matter." "I'm not emotionally involved with him," she protested. "It was just closure, Silas, just making sure I was making the right choice." "And what conclusion did you reach?" "That I want to marry you, obviously. That's why I'm here with all these wedding plans." I walked over to the mantelpiece where I kept important documents, insurance papers, mortgage information, and our wedding contract with the venue. I'd been thinking about this moment for 3 days, and I knew exactly what I needed to say. "Respect isn't something you can schedule around your emotional convenience, Delaney. It's not something you put on hold while you figure out whether you'd rather be with someone else." "That's not what I was doing." "You disappeared completely. No communication for 5 days. You lied about where you were and who you were with. You made me call your sister, who had to cover for your deception. And then you walked in here with wedding plans like none of that happened." I turned to face her. "What if I'd done the same thing to you? What if I'd told you I was going to help my brother, then spent 2 weeks with an ex-girlfriend working through unfinished business?" She didn't answer. "The ring, Delaney." She stared at me for a long moment, then slowly removed the engagement ring from her finger. It was a simple solitaire, nothing flashy, but it had taken me 3 months to save up for it on my engineer's salary. She placed it on the coffee table next to her wedding plans. "This is a mistake, Silas," she said quietly. "You're throwing away 3 years because of a misunderstanding." "No," I replied. "You threw away 3 years because you thought I'd accept being your backup plan." She left that evening without another word, gathering up her wedding plans like someone collecting the pieces of a broken vase. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Not from Delaney, from her friends, her cousins, even her co-worker from the dental office where she worked as a hygienist. The messages all had the same theme. I was making a huge mistake. Delaney was heartbroken. Couldn't I see how much she loved me? By noon, there was a knock at my door. It was Sarah, Delaney's best friend since high school. "Silas, what the hell is wrong with you?" she demanded before I could even say hello. "Delaney is devastated. She made one mistake and you're throwing away your entire relationship?" "Did she tell you what the mistake was?" I asked. "She said you saw her with an old friend and jumped to conclusions." "An old friend." Yes, and now she's at her parents' house crying her eyes out because the man she loves won't even listen to her side of the story. I almost laughed. Even in crisis, Delaney was still managing the narrative. Over the next week, the campaign intensified. More friends showed up at my house. Her mother called me twice, begging me to reconsider. Her father sent me a text saying I was acting rash and should think about what I was giving up. But the strangest part was seeing Delaney herself. She started showing up places she knew I'd be. The grocery store where I always shopped on Saturday mornings. The coffee shop near my office where I sometimes grabbed lunch. She never approached me directly, but she'd position herself where I couldn't miss seeing her, looking sad and devastated, like a wounded bird hoping for rescue. Then came the social media offensive. I don't use Facebook or Instagram much, but several coworkers showed me what she was posting. Cryptic messages about learning to heal from betrayal and when someone you love abandons you right before your wedding. Photos of herself looking contemplative with captions like, "Some people run when love gets real," and "Commitment means fighting for each other, not giving up at the first challenge." She was painting herself as the victim of my cold-hearted abandonment, conveniently leaving out the part about spending 2 weeks with her ex-boyfriend while lying to her fiancé. The comments section was full of her friends expressing outrage on her behalf and speculating about my character flaws. I realized she was trying to control the story before I had a chance to tell it myself. That's when I decided to act. I spent an entire weekend drafting a letter, not an angry rant or a detailed exposure of her deception, just a simple professional communication that stated the facts. I had it reviewed by a lawyer friend to make sure it was appropriate. Then I printed copies for everyone who mattered. The letter was addressed to all wedding guests, family members, and close friends. It read, "Dear friends and family, after careful consideration, Delaney and I have decided to cancel our wedding scheduled for October 15th. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause and appreciate your understanding during this personal matter. All deposits and arrangements have been handled, so no action is required on your part. Thank you for your support over the years. Sincerely, Silas Wren." I mailed them all on a Tuesday morning, then sat back and waited. The response was swift and decisive. Within 48 hours, the social media campaign stopped. The well-meaning friends stopped calling. The surprise visits to my usual haunts ended completely. What I learned later, through mutual friends who remained neutral, was that several people had started asking Delaney direct questions after receiving my letter. If it was a mutual decision, why was she posting about betrayal and abandonment? If they'd decided together, why did she seem so surprised by the cancellation? Under pressure to explain the contradictions, she apparently broke down and admitted to spending time with an old friend while we were engaged. Once that truth came out, her narrative of being the innocent victim collapsed completely. The social isolation that followed was swift and thorough. Even her closest friends began distancing themselves, not because they judged her for having doubts about the marriage, but because she'd tried to manipulate them into pressuring me while lying about her own actions. As for me, I returned to my normal life with remarkable ease. I threw myself into my work, took up hiking on weekends, and started reading books I'd been meaning to get to for years. I joined a Thursday night trivia team at a local brewery and discovered I was pretty good at it. 6 months later, I ran into Rebecca at a coffee shop in downtown Boise. She looked embarrassed but approached me anyway. "Silas, I owe you an apology," she said. "I should have told you the truth when you called that day." "You were protecting your sister," I replied. "I understand." "No, I was enabling her," Rebecca corrected. "And I've regretted it ever since. What she did to you was wrong, and I'm sorry I played a part in it." I thanked her for the apology, and she told me something interesting. Apparently, Delaney's reunion with Zane had lasted exactly 3 weeks after our breakup, before he decided he wasn't interested in anything serious. She'd been reaching out to old boyfriends ever since, trying to recapture something that had never really existed. That conversation confirmed what I'd suspected all along. I hadn't lost the love of my life. I'd dodged a bullet. A year later, I met someone new. Her name is Emma. She's a veterinarian, and when she says she'll call, she calls. When she says she'll be somewhere, she's there. When she travels for work, she sends me photos and texts me every day, not because she has to, but because she wants to share her experiences with me. It's amazing how simple trust can be when it's real. These days, I occasionally hear updates about Delaney through the Boise social network. She's still single, still posting inspirational quotes about finding authentic love and learning to trust again. I feel no satisfaction in her struggles, but I feel no regret about my decision either. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about making someone pay for what they did to you. Sometimes it's simply refusing to let them waste any more of your time while you build something better without them. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.